In this video, I shall explain the assessment criteria and the examples of suitable evidence which you can submit to demonstrate your competence against each assessment criterion. The Unit 6 is Develop and Implement Proactive Monitoring System for Health and Safety. In this unit, there are 4 learning outcomes. The first 2 learning outcomes include the assessment criteria which shall measure your skill, while the third learning outcome includes the assessment criteria which are designed to measure your knowledge and understanding. Last learning outcome is about your CPD. For all skill-based assessment criteria, you will need to submit documentary evidence from your workplace and provide a brief narrative of the evidence, that is, your role in the subject activity for which you submitted an evidence. The documentary evidence of your competence can be the documents, records, pictures and videos, etc. Remember that your submitted evidence must be valid, authentic, current, sufficient and reliable. For knowledge-based assessment criteria, you shall need to submit a written response in your own words. Your response must be between 250 to 350 words against each assessment criterion. There are 8 assessment criteria in the first learning outcome. We shall discuss each assessment criterion in detail, so you should know what each assessment criterion means and how you can demonstrate your competence against each. The assessment criterion 1.1 of Unit 6 is Develop workplace inspection and monitoring systems and procedures to include methodology, frequency, compliance with health and safety regulations, organizational requirements. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you use different methods of inspection and monitoring to measure and monitor the OHS performance, and you can set the inspection and monitoring frequency as per the level of OHS risks. You can also ensure that your inspection and monitoring system meets the requirement of your organizational needs as well as the applicable regulatory requirements. In the next slides, I shall discuss what can be the suitable evidence to meet the requirements of this assessment criterion. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit inspection and monitoring plan and its justification that why do you carry out some inspections more often than others. Inspection and monitoring procedure, which includes who carries out inspections and monitoring, what is the inspection criteria, etc. Applicable regulatory requirements related to inspection and monitoring, for example, are there any radiations or airborne chemical exposures, etc. The internal and external audit report related to the inspection and monitoring process showing its effectiveness and efficiency, organogram of the inspection and monitoring personnel, process flow diagram of inspection and monitoring process, list of the key performance indicators and the performance criteria or performance standard against each. The assessment criterion 1.2 of Unit 6 is Analyze the competence needs of the people who will carry out the inspection and monitoring in the organization. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can analyze what level of competence shall be needed for the inspection and monitoring personnel, keeping in view the nature and type of processes of your organization. Let's discuss what can be the suitable evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit training need assessment records, records of the job specification of inspection and monitoring personnel, which mentions the required competence levels. The assessment criterion 1.3 of Unit 6 is Plan in conjunction with others the implementation of appropriate inspection and monitoring systems in the organization. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can plan the effective implementation of measuring and monitoring process in the organization by involving the relevant stakeholders in this process. Note, the relevant stakeholders could be the employees, supervisors, managers from various departments, and contractors, subcontractors, etc. Let's discuss what can be the suitable evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit the minutes of the meeting regarding the implementation of the relevant department's teams, letters or emails or any other communication records regarding the inspection and monitoring plan, training records regarding inspection and monitoring system implementation, etc. The assessment criterion 1.4 of Unit 6 is identify any relevant monitoring equipment that may be required. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can identify if there is a need for measuring and monitoring equipment to ensure health and safety performance of your organization. Note, monitoring equipment could be airborne chemical detection equipment, noise meters, radiation dosimeters, measuring scales, thermometers or pressure gauges, etc. Let's discuss what can be the suitable evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit records of the purchasing of the measuring equipment, records of the risk assessments showing the requirements of measuring or monitoring equipment against the hazards, records of measuring and monitoring equipment's calibration, video or pictures of you installing or using the measuring equipment or monitoring equipment at your own workplace. The assessment criterion 1.5 of Unit 6 is review health and safety statutory records and records initiated by the organization for proactive performance monitoring. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can carry out proactive performance monitoring by reviewing the health and safety statutory records and records initiated by the organization. By reviewing these records, you can identify any areas where improvements are needed to ensure that you are proactively taking steps to maintain a safe and healthy workplace, thus preventing accidents and injuries from occurring. In the next slides, I shall discuss what can be the suitable evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit list of key performance indicators for proactive monitoring which you have established for your workplace, proactive monitoring plan or procedure, review of risk assessment records, training records, OHS inspections record, calibration records, OHS culture assessment, data related to workers' involvement and participation in OHS matters, and health surveillance as applicable. The assessment criteria 1.6 of Unit 6 is analyze all internal documentation and records to ensure proactive monitoring is appropriately managed. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can review all internal documentation and records to ensure that the practice of proactive monitoring is being carried out properly and to identify any potential areas of improvement that could help to enhance the effectiveness of the monitoring process. Let's see what can be the suitable evidence. The evidence submitted for assessment criteria 1.5 shall be sufficient to demonstrate your competence against this assessment criteria 2. 1.7 Involve managers, employee representatives and employees in health and safety proactive monitoring systems and procedures. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can effectively involve managers, employee representatives and employees in health and safety proactive monitoring systems and procedures. Let's see what can be the suitable evidence which you may provide. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit minutes of the meeting in which the discussion regarding the proactive monitoring was carried out with the managers, supervisors and employees, etc. Letters, emails or other communication records showing the responsibilities and authorities being given to different colleagues regarding proactive monitoring. A detailed proactive monitoring plan which specifies who will do what, when, where and how. 1.8 Maintain appropriate records of health and safety proactive monitoring systems and outcomes. To demonstrate your competence, you have to submit evidence that you maintain the appropriate records which show how proactive monitoring was done and how effective were the results in reducing the OHS incidents. Let's see what can be the possible evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit organizational procedure for retaining the documented information regarding proactive monitoring and its performance, or the records of proactive monitoring. There are 5 assessment criteria and the second learning outcome. We shall discuss each assessment criterion in detail in the next slides. 2.1 Inform directors, senior, line, functional and technical managers, employee representatives and employees of the outcomes of the health and safety proactive performance monitoring of the organization. To demonstrate your competence, you have to submit evidence that you can communicate the health and safety performance monitoring results to the relevant persons within the organization. Let's discuss what can be the suitable evidence from your workplace. Letters, emails or any other communication records which show that you have communicated outcome and results of proactive monitoring process to your colleagues. Minutes of the meetings in which you presented the results of proactive monitoring process of your organization. 2.2 Prepare reports of the outcomes of the health and safety proactive performance monitoring of the organization. To demonstrate your competence, you have to submit evidence that you can prepare the report about the performance of the health and safety proactive monitoring process. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit the records of performance reports in which you give details of your findings, that what aspects of proactive monitoring was good and what aspects need improvement. The report can either be a Word document or a PowerPoint slide showing the performance of the proactive monitoring process. 2.3 Interpret to the non-specialist audience the outcomes of the health and safety proactive performance monitoring of the organization. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you can communicate the results of proactive OHS monitoring to the non-specialist audience in a simple way so they could relate the results with the business performance of the organization. Note, the top management including the board members, CEO and senior directors are usually the people who understand the performance in business and financial terms. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit records of performance reports in which you mention the financial performance of the proactive monitoring process, minutes of the meeting if the performance is discussed in the meeting, PowerPoint presentation if they are used to display the performance, emails, letters you send to non-OHS professionals within the organization regarding the proactive monitoring performance for a specified period of time. 2.4 Propose recommendations based on the outcomes of the health and safety proactive performance monitoring of the organization. To demonstrate your competence, you have to submit evidence that you can propose effective recommendations based on the results of proactive monitoring process. Let's discuss what can be the suitable evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit records of the performance reports with recommendations, minutes of the meetings with recommendations, PowerPoint presentation which mentions the recommendations, emails, letters or any other communication records you sent within the organization which mentions the recommendations. 2.5 Respond to the requirements of regulatory authorities in respect of the outcomes of health and safety proactive performance monitoring of the organization. To demonstrate your competence against this assessment criterion, you have to submit evidence that you respond to the regulatory requirements related to proactive monitoring. Examples of regulatory requirements related to health and safety proactive monitoring could be exposure to toxic substances or physical hazards like noise or radiations. In the next slides, I shall discuss what can be the suitable evidence. To demonstrate your competence, you can submit letters or emails sent to the regulatory body including performance data related to proactive monitoring performance report, The regulatory body requirements applicable on your organization regarding proactive monitoring, regulatory body's inspection and audit report regarding proactive monitoring performance, the procedure regarding regulatory compliance for proactive monitoring. The learning outcome 3 relates to the knowledge domain. There are 8 assessment criteria in it. We shall discuss each assessment criterion in detail. 3.1 is analyze the nature and role of active health and safety monitoring systems within the organization. 3.2 present the rationale for proactive monitoring system for health and safety. Rationale means the justification. Consider the following when responding. Why do you think that proactive monitoring should be carried out for health and safety performance? What will be the implications if the organizations do not do it, rather they just rely on the reactive monitoring performance? Your response must be between 250 to 350 words. 3.3 describe the whole range of monitoring equipment. Consider the following when responding. What are various monitoring equipment that can be used as part of the health and safety proactive monitoring process? You need to describe the structure and function of these equipment. 3.4 explain sampling routines. Consider the following when responding. What is sampling and what is the significance, that is importance of sampling? Why do you carry out sampling and why not carry out the 100% inspections of the workplace? What factors you consider when selecting samples in the health and safety proactive monitoring activities? 3.5 evaluate the procedure for workplace inspections and activity observations. Consider the following when responding. What is the performance standard for your proactive monitoring procedure? Does it achieve what it intends to achieve? Explain how. And if it does not achieve its intended purpose, then explain why. 3.6 explain the principles of effective written and verbal communication. Consider the following when responding. The principles of written communication can be clarity, accuracy, conciseness, tone, structure, formatting, proofreading. You have to explain all these in your own organizational context. The principle of verbal communication can be clarity, non-verbal communication, active listening, tone, empathy, respect. 3.7 explain how to respond to the health and safety needs of others. Consider the following when responding. Implicit and stated needs and requirements of the stakeholders and interested parties. 3.8 explain external factors influencing active health and safety monitoring system. Health and safety statutory requirements and industry best practices for proactive monitoring systems and documentation. Quality management requirements for documentation. Consider the following when responding. What external factors can influence positively or negatively the health and safety proactive monitoring process of your organization? You must focus on 2 external factors, that is regulatory requirements and industry best practices, quality management requirements for documentation. The learning outcome 4 relates to your CPD. You have to submit the relevant form as you have submitted for the previous units. You can download the form from the resources section of your online management system. For your understanding, just assume that a health and safety auditor is visiting your workplace and asking you to provide the evidence of the conformity. The evidence you will present to that auditor will also be valid to demonstrate your competence for NVQ qualifications. So imagine the auditor is asking the following questions from you. What documents, records or other evidence you will present them to meet the requirements of each question? So if auditor asks you the following questions and seeks explanation as well as the evidence of your claims, then what will be your response and what documents or records will you present to them? Have you developed the measuring and monitoring system to evaluate the health and safety performance? Have you analyzed the competence requirements for the measuring and monitoring process of your organization? Have you planned the implementation of measuring and monitoring system in conjunction with the relevant people within the organization? Have you identified if there is any need for the use of measuring or monitoring equipment? Have you reviewed health and safety records which were identified by the organization and the records related to legal requirements to monitor performance proactively? Have you reviewed the internal documentations and records to monitor health and safety performance proactively? Have you involved your colleagues from various departments in the health and safety proactive monitoring systems? Have you maintained records of health and safety proactive monitoring process so its effectiveness can be reviewed for improvement? Have you communicated the health and safety performance monitoring results to the relevant persons within the organization? Have you prepared the reports regarding the performance of your proactive monitoring system? Have you communicated health and safety proactive monitoring system's performance in layman terms so non-specialist person could understand too? Have you made recommendations for improvement in health and safety monitoring system based on current performance? Have you responded to the regulatory body's requirements regarding the health and safety proactive monitoring? Remember, when you will show the evidence to the auditor, you will also brief them the context of the submitted evidence and explain to them so the presented evidence makes more sense. Similarly, you have to write the same explanation as the narrative of your submitted evidence to the assessor too, so the assessor is able to understand your role and the effectiveness of the submitted evidence against the requirements. Assessment criterion 3.1 to 3.8, you will need to submit your written response in your own words, give suitable examples from your own workplace. Your response must be limited between 250 to 350 words against each assessment criterion.